Is forgiveness something people earn or something people choose? When people talk about forgiveness, they usually talk about it like it's a sign of being a good person. Like forgiveness means you're mature, healed, or somehow above the person who hurt you. But maybe there's something more complicated underneath it. Because forgiveness is one of the few human actions where the person who caused the pain is not always the person in control of what happens next. A person can hurt you once and still affect you years later. Not because they're still there, but because the memory of what happened continues to live inside of you. And that creates a strange kind of power. Someone who harmed you can continue influencing your emotions even without being present. This is where forgiveness becomes less of a morality and more about psychology. Some people believe that forgiveness has to be earned, and that makes sense. If someone destroys your trust, causes damage, or refuses to take responsibility, why should they receive forgiveness? Without accountability, forgiveness can almost feel like a way of protecting the person who caused the harm instead of respecting the person who experienced it. But the other side is still uncomfortable. Because what if forgiveness is not actually a gift given to someone else? What if it is a decision made for yourself? Because if forgiveness depends completely on someone else changing, apologizing, or finally understanding what they did, then your healing is still connected to them. They hurt you once, and now they still control when you're allowed to move forward. Psychologist Everett Worthington researches that forgiveness suggests that forgiveness is not simply forgetting or excusing someone's actions. It is often a process where people intentionally work through resentment and choose to change their relationship with the pain they experienced. But forgiveness does not mean pretending to damage never happened. Research by Robert Enright emphasizes that forgiveness involves recognizing the injustice first. You cannot forgive something you refuse to admit was wrong, and maybe that's the part people struggle with. We often confuse forgiveness with letting someone back into our lives, but those are two different things. You can forgive someone and still never trust them again. You can forgive someone and still believe they were wrong. You can forgive someone and still believe they should face consequences. Because forgiveness is not the removal of accountability, it is the removal of control. The darker side of forgiveness is that sometimes people hold on to anger because it feels like protection. It feels like proof that what happened mattered. Letting go could almost feel like betraying yourself, like you're saying the pain was not important. But sometimes holding on to pain becomes another way the person who hurt you stays connected to you. Maybe forgiveness is not deciding whether someone deserves to be free of guilt. Maybe it is deciding whether you deserve to be free from carrying the weight of their actions. And that is where the debate gets complicated. Because if forgiveness is something people have to earn, then justice has a clear place. But if forgiveness is something people choose, then maybe it reveals something deeper about us humans. That we are not only defined by what happened to us, but by what we decide to do with it afterwards. Maybe forgiveness is not about proving someone else changed. Maybe it is about proving that they no longer have the ability to change you. The forgiveness paradox. For centuries, humanity lived by guidance of the reflections. No one knew where they came from or why they existed, only that they answered. Every question brought a response. Every uncertainty found a direction. People believed the reflections understood what they could not. They became more than objects. They became the foundation of civilization itself. A person's future was no longer something they discovered. It was something they were shown. When a child wondered what they were meant to become, they looked into the reflection. When someone faced a difficult choice, they searched for an answer within it. Slowly, people stopped trusting themselves because the reflection had always appeared wiser than they were. Then one day, the reflections stopped. There was no warning, no explanation. The surfaces that once revealed endless possibilities became completely empty. People stood in front of them for hours waiting for the answers they had built their entire lives around. But all they saw was themselves. The world began to collapse, not because the reflections had failed, but because humanity had forgotten how to exist without them. For generations, scholars had studied the reflections, claiming that they were the only ones capable of understanding their messages. They created interpretations, explanations, and rules based on what they believed the reflections meant. Over time, their interpretations became accepted as truth. The original meaning became buried beneath centuries of alterations, till people were no longer following the reflections themselves, but the versions created by those who controlled their voice. When the people finally searched through the history of the reflections, they discovered something disturbing. The answers they had followed were never as pure as they believed. They had been changed, adjusted, and reshaped by those who wanted humanity to see the world in a certain way. The reflections had not been silent. They had been drowned out. The discovery divided humanity. Some blamed the scholars who had manipulated the truth, believing they were responsible for generations of false beliefs. Others blamed the people who followed without questioning, arguing that truth had always been visible to those who were willing to search for it. Then the true reflection appeared. For the first time in centuries, it revealed itself without distortion. It did not show people what they wanted to see. It showed them everything they had ignored. The wars created from false beliefs, the decisions made from false guidance, the lives shaped by something that was never real. The people expected anger. They expected punishment. Instead, the reflection remained silent because it had a question of its own. For centuries, it had watched humanity search for answers. It had watched them accept falsehoods, not because they were forced to, but because those falsehoods were easier to believe. Yet, it had also watched the scholars twist something that was never theirs to control. So who was truly responsible? The ones who corrupted the truth? Or the ones who surrendered their ability to question it? The reflection finally spoke. I thought the greatest danger was those who could change the truth. I was wrong. The greatest danger was those who no longer cared to find it. And for the first time since humanity discovered the reflections, there was no answer waiting for them, only the responsibility of finding one themselves.